Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's a Tuesday. We're taking your Tuesday thoughts on a variety of things. You've got Champions League group stage starting today. You've got Copa Libertadores group stage ending today. You've got a MLS match this evening as well. Lots of things to get into. You can get weird if you want to. Share your Tuesday thoughts with us using that hashtag on Twitter at SoccerDownHere. You can join us on the Twitch pitch, twitch.tv/SoccerDownHere. You can even email us, soccerdownhere@gmail. Sorry we're a couple minutes late. John was being taught how to use a microphone properly again. Again. And he's worked in the industry that uses microphones for a long time. Mm-hmm. But anyway... that's how the day has started. I hope everybody's doing well. Soccer over there last night, we got into a lot of the preview of Champions League and of Copa Libertadores. If you want to watch Libertadores tonight, you can do that on Fanatis, fntz.co/soccerdownhere. You can also watch on BN if you have BN Sports on any of your cable or satellite providers. 6:15, a couple of games, finishing out Defensa y Justicia's group. And at 8:30, you've got two groups that are concluding, so 4 games. So that's the evening portion of your day. Champions League starts at just before 1 o'clock, so you're pretty much set. It almost runs all the way through. You got an hour break or so for dinner at about 5, and you're good. It's 4 games in a row, if you want to watch it that way, or... CBS has given you something a little different, and I'd love to hear people's takes on this. The Golazo Show. It's a new show. It's their whip around. It's their NFL Red Zone kind of show. TUDN has done this with, I believe it was Zona Football, and they did it so well that CBS said, hey, Nico Cantor, you've been hosting that. We're going to bring you over here and do it in English. So Nico Cantor will be hosting the Golazo Show. That's on CBS Sports Network. All of the games will be on CBS All Access. So if you want to watch the game in its entirety, or if you want to flip from game to game, that's where you go. If you want to watch a show that will bounce around to all of the games in that 3 o'clock window, the Golazo Show on CBS Sports Network. Do you like this idea? Do you not like this idea? Are you happy with the way CBS has presented things so far? Are you not happy? I'd be curious to hear people's thoughts on this. I think what they've done that has impressed me is they've found a way to balance doing something different and outside the box with also doing things in a traditional way with traditional voices and experts. They found the right way to do both, in my opinion.
No, and I'm intrigued. As someone who on Sunday afternoons watches the Red Zone channel, is the way that I get all of my NFL information. I don't get locked into one game. I will watch Red Zone channel, and I like how Scott Hansen goes from game. I don't have the other version, the Andrew Siciliano version. I have the Scott Hansen version.
Why are there 2 versions? What's that mean?
One is tied to cable television, and the other is tied to satellite TV.
What?
One is directly sanctioned by NFL Network, and the other is on satellite providers.
I didn't know there were 2 different versions of Red Zone.
Yep. The Andrew Siciliano version is on satellite providers, and the Red Zone channel by NFL Network is on cable providers.
Okay, that's dumb. But anyway.
And I think the key here, and I'll watch Red Zone. I will watch the Red Zone channel. I'll watch the Golazo element because I want to see how they're going to do it. But the key to make this work is really as much as it is the host who can juggle from game to game, but the folks behind the scenes that you don't see. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who are watching and what's going on, and you have the host with monitors off to the side. The interaction between the host and the production crew to sit there and be on the same page and go, okay, so we need to go from this game to this game. Hey, guys, can we go here? And have that, to have that oneness of thought is going to be key in all of this and how they pull it off.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's going to take is the right personalities driving it and switching at the right times. I think with American football, it's a little bit easier to pick those times. With this football, it's a little different. I'll be fascinated to see how they do it. I'll be watching that this afternoon to see how it all comes together. But CBS has kind of covered this a lot of different ways. They've got the CBS Sports HQ side of it. They've got the CBS Sports Network side of it. They've got the All Access side of it. I think they're going to have some post-game things as well. It's pretty comprehensive coverage. I know people get worked up about paywalls and such, and all the games being behind paywalls now, or all the games in the 3 o'clock window being behind paywalls. So let me be accurate here. It's I think it's kind of inevitable, to be perfectly honest. I like this better than previous ways where if your game wasn't picked, you couldn't see it, period. Bleacher Report, I think, just never really understood how to cover this thing. Turner and Bleacher Report just never quite got it. This feels like a modern way of covering the Champions League. I like it. But it's all going to come down to the execution. I think you're dead on in terms of production, producer, director, host being able to navigate all of the madness. I'm assuming there will be commercial breaks, so how does that work out? I don't know. I'm not positive of that. It's going to be an interesting process, and at first day will probably be a little bit of sorting it out. It's not like they've really had an ability to, work on this because this is game one of the group stage. Cantor comes at it from having done this, so he's going to be in a prime position to do it. And if you've watched 2Day NA, you have seen his English and Spanish commentary. Nico does a good job, and yes, he is the son of the legendary Andres Cantor. It's very cool to see Andres shout out his kid on that one. Let me know what you think. I like it. We've had a topic here about on the Twitch pitch that you're waiting to see MLS do something like this from Ricky Ricardo. They have on decision day. I think that's it. On Saturday nights, where there are a variety of games, I would like to see MLS find a way to do this. Whether it's on ESPN Plus as just part of the package there, whether it's on MLS's own digital channel. I don't know how they want to figure it out, or if they sell it to somebody different. I think you could do it on Saturday nights, and it would be kind of a cool way to consume, those nights where your team might not be playing, but there's games going on all over the league with different storylines. If you get the right people doing it, it could work really, really well and be a great introduction to the rest of the league for fans of the league of maybe one specific team. This way you could get into others. I mean, that's been how Red Zone's worked for me. Like if I'm a hardcore Falcons fan and I'm only going to watch the Falcons, opening whistle to final whistle, and I know that's asking for suffering. But if I don't want to get into every other team in the league and every other game and know every other storyline, to follow it closely, turn on the Red Zone channel, and you're going to bounce around. You're going to see all the big highlights.
And, I mean, you bring up the idea for MLS. I mean, in a season like this one that we're currently in, could you imagine what we could have had in a Red Zone opportunity for midweek, weekend, where you're having multiple games across the board? I'd be locked in. I would be absolutely hooked for a Red Zone channel or a Red Zone opportunity for MLS, wherever they would do it. I would be absolutely all in on something like this. But once again, it comes down to the personnel that's attached to it to want to keep you there outside of just wanting to see things. You've got to be on the, pardon the pun, you've got to be on the ball for the entire time, and it's got to flow. It can't clunk its way through it, and you've got to move.
Alex Pacine asked if we had discussed how so many supporters in England protested their pay-per-view EPL scheme this weekend. They boycotted the matches. They gave that $20. I think it was like 14-something pounds, $14.95.
91.
Something like that. They gave that to local food banks. Newcastle supporters themselves raised over $25,000, and there were some questions back and forth. So that one is somewhat unique due to the pandemic because England has historically not allowed national broadcasts, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think I have everything right on it. They haven't allowed national broadcasts in the 3 o'clock window over there, our 10 a.m. window where there's a whole bunch of games and across all divisions, because they don't want to affect live attendance. So they have not allowed live broadcasts in that time period nationally. Well, right now people can't go into the stands. So instead of making the games available on public television or through television partners like they did finishing out the previous season, they put these on pay-per-view. I get it in that these clubs aren't getting any ticket revenue right now at all. I think the better route would have been to have somebody pay you to show these games, as opposed to asking your fans to pay to watch these games right now when they would normally be buying a ticket. I do understand it from a revenue perspective. I think when you did it one way and now you're changing it where it looks like you are trying to make more money on it, which you probably are, that's not going to go over too well at the moment. But a lot of this is tied to that 10 a.m. window where games have not been sold before. I remember there being a lot of trying to figure out how to make it work finishing out last season in that window, and they eventually made all the games available on television without pay-per-view. That's a little bit different scenario than some of this. But I think it's down basically to a national blackout at the 3 o'clock window, right?
Yeah. This season, this comes from Wales Online. When Premier League returned to action in June 2020 post-lockdown, you got those 3 p.m.s televised.
Yeah.
The rule originated back in the 1960s when the then head of Burnley argued that 3 p.m. matches on TV would negatively affect attendance of lower league matches. The blackout rule means no match, Premier League, FA Cup, Football League, can be televised between 2:45 and 5:15 local time.
Yeah, but they got around that to finish out the last season, so
Right.
They probably could have handled that too here, but they chose not to. Domer says, talking about pay-per-view stuff, he pays via iFollow to watch Wimbledon and Lincoln City in League One. I mean, look, you're not going to be able, and I think that's a prime example of the situation. Like, you're not going to be able to sell League One rights in the United States. You're not going to find a buyer to pick up those rights and televise those games in a normal way. So the only way you're going to watch them is through some kind of a streaming service. To have it available is awesome. Lower divisions having streaming services available, awesome. Maybe, smaller leagues worldwide to have a streaming service available here in this country, awesome. These things are good. I think where it gets interesting is bigger games that either have previously been available publicly, like Champions League, which has been, although in limited numbers. It hasn't just been every game, no matter what, is on every channel. You're good. You don't have to worry about it. That's never really been the case. It's never been the case. There's no really. Now, those games are behind a paywall. They're behind the CBS All Access subscription model, which I don't think that's going to go away. I think you're going to see more and more because, one, it's financially viable, I would assume. Whatever they've paid for the rights, they're trying to make that back on subscriptions to All Access. So I don't think they would be doing that if they didn't think they would make the money back. And two, it's maybe not financially viable for them to put those games on CBS All Access, which isn't the biggest channel. It's decently cleared, but not the largest cleared cable sports channel. Or on other CBS partners, or sub-license, or put it on CBS itself. Maybe the financials just don't work, and this is the best way to do it. I do like that they're committing resources to the content. It's not just slapping world feeds up and saying, yeah, whatever, here he is. They're putting other things around it to take this seriously. So I think they're finding a new ground that's pretty interesting.
I don't know if this is breaking news or a developing story. Because it's not really a complete, and it's not a completed action. So that's kind of why I'm hedging my bet.
No, I won't hit you with a pancake. All right, what is it?
Mark Kleinman, Sky News City editor. Liverpool and Manchester United are in talks about a bombshell plot, these are his words, involving Europe's biggest football clubs to join a new FIFA-backed tournament that would reshape the sport's global landscape. Sky has learned that financiers are assembling a $6 billion funding package to assist the creation of what could become known as the European Premier League. More than a dozen teams in France, Germany, Italy, and England would be the founder members of this competition.
Man, you kind of knew this was going to happen at some point, right? The project big picture was step one in this plan. Step two, step three, profit. This is probably going to happen in some form or fashion. I've always felt like the domestic leagues could hold off on this happening, and the trade-off would be an expanded Champions League kind of scenario, where instead of playing just 6 group stage games, you'd be playing in the 10 to 12 region. Because look, Liverpool and Manchester United and Juventus and Bayern Munich and clubs at that level, they want the games against one another. They don't really care as much about the games against your smaller first division teams in your own countries. They just don't care as much. Why don't they care as much? Money, financials, what's going to be a bigger deal for Manchester United to play Real Madrid or to play Burnley? No offense, Burnley, but that's just the reality. They've got to find a balance because, and I don't think it's a mistake why this is happening right now. This has been talked about for a while in a lot of different permutations. Juventus and Real Madrid have been two that have really pushed for European Super League situations. And Bayern has talked about it. There was the whole footy leaks thing going on, over a year ago now, where there were emails shared between some of these different chairmen and conversations have been had. Now, though, you're in a different situation where, one, there is a possibility that in Europe and probably worldwide, sports, and especially this one, becomes more of a television product for some period of time. You're not going to have full stadiums for a while, I don't think. I saw Greece pulled back from allowing fans in the stands. They're one of the latest ones. Ireland has gone into a not total lockdown, but as strong of a lockdown as they have done for a 6-week period, I believe. So I don't see Old Trafford, Anfield being full anytime soon. That's a lot of money. Where can you go make a lot of money? By creating a Super League and playing the biggest teams in the continent on a regular basis and not having to worry about the Burnleys and stuff. And as many have said, I know Marcelo Bielsa spoke on this, quite a few different managers and club leaders have spoken on it, but not from Manchester United or from Liverpool. They've been a little quiet on this because they were behind the project big picture situation. What's their obligation to the rest of the game in their country? And some feel like they have a strong obligation to that. Some feel like they don't have any obligation to that. We've seen the solidarity payments in Germany that have helped some of the smaller clubs. We've seen the Dutch clubs do this. We've seen others be like, yeah, we don't really care. It's all about us. This is a scary time because in the past, your domestic leagues were still very strong and had a lot of say. But let's take England, for example. Let's take the FA. So the FA itself is in a bad financial spot and is asking the Premier League to help them out. the Big Six, and led by Manchester United and Liverpool, basically tried to throw their weight around to get control of the Premier League and shape it the way they wanted to make as much money as they could in that situation. They did have money tied to giving some to the lower divisions. They did have an increased percentage going to the lower divisions. There were things in place there that were honestly good. But they made a power play. It failed. Everybody said, ha-ha, we defeated the bad guys. Well, the bad guys are back. And this is the next step. Look, if they don't get the way they want things to be in the Premier League to make as much money as they can for their clubs, they're going to find another way. And now it's weaker than it was before across all the leagues. It's going to be a harder fight because the thing that the domestic leagues have had has been that game day, match day revenue to point to. Like, yes, Manchester United and Burnley is not as attractive of a proposition here on television, but the stands are still going to be full. This is still going to be a big deal. Well, now if you don't have the fans in the stands and you're not making that match day revenue from that game, you're not selling it in a big way worldwide, but you are selling Manchester United and Real Madrid worldwide. You are selling that one anywhere you want in the world. Whereas Manchester United, Burnley, people might pass on that one. It's you thought the Project Big Picture conversation was large. Keep an eye on this one. This is going to dominate the conversation for a little while. And, it happens on the first day of the Champions League by total accident.
Oops.
Yeah, just a total mistake.
And boom goes the dynamite.
Provisional start date could be as early as 2022. Up to 18 teams involve fixtures played during the regular European season. The top placed teams in the league would then play in a knockout format to conclude the tournament, with prize money for the winners expected to be worth hundreds of millions of pounds each year.
So give me some details. Is this with UEFA or is this in counter to the Champions League?
FIFA backed is how it's being worded. There is no mention of UEFA in this.
Okay, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. There's got to be more detail in this. Does this replace, I'm assuming with the number of teams that it would, domestic competition? Does this just replace everything, and this is what the big clubs want to do, period, that's it?
Reading the article, kind of scanning through it quickly, and...
So this is, okay, Sky Sports, a FIFA-backed tournament is the way they're talking about it.
Okay. It would effectively usurp UEFA's Champions League competition.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah. So FIFA is jumping UEFA, which, this is going to be fun. $6 billion funding package that financiers are assembling, and that's been talked about before with the financiers in the background saying, yeah, you do this, we're going to fund it, we're going to make this happen because we're going to make a boatload of money too. More than a dozen teams from England, France, Germany, Italy, Spain are in negotiations about becoming founding members of this competition. As many as 5 English clubs could sign up to join it, with a provisional start date said to be discussed early 2022. FIFA has been involved in developing the new format. 18 teams, fixtures played during the regular European season. So these teams would not be pulling out of their domestic competition, it sounds like, because they're saying played during the regular European season. They would be pulling out of the Champions League or anything UEFA-backed. Top place teams would play in a knockout. Prize money for the winners expected to be worth hundreds of millions of pounds each year. Formal announcement about the plans was possible as soon as the end of this month, although on Tuesday a number of key details, including the full list of participating clubs, had yet to be finalized, and plans could still fall apart. The source described it as, quote, potentially the most important development in world club football for decades. Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Tottenham are candidates to join. Liverpool, Manchester United would be part of this as well. It's not thought that any English clubs have signed legally binding terms to join. Unclear which member of the so-called Big Six would miss out if only 5 are ultimately involved. There's another fun one. Talk about Project Big Picture and all of that. The giant Wall Street bank J.P. Morgan is in talks to provide $6 billion of debt financing to help launch the European Premier League, with the proceeds repayable from future broadcast income generated by the tournament. Other banks are expected to join in this financing, which would become one of the world's richest annual team sports competitions if it gets off the ground. Each of the founding teams is expected to earn fees paid hundreds of millions of pounds to participate, with clubs such as Manchester United and Real Madrid receiving the biggest sums for joining. Either 16 or 18 teams, meaning a likely minimum of 30 matches for each club based on a format of round-robin home-and-away fixtures, although that's said to be among the details being finalized. European Premier League would usurp UEFA's Champions League. However, Football Insider said that if UEFA was not involved, the new tournament would represent an incendiary move from FIFA that would undermine the European governing body's principal annual revenue-generating tournament. Yeah, it could potentially kill UEFA, and then that would create total anarchy in the way that the game is managed worldwide. There will be legal challenges, no question. Just there's no way around that. One source cast doubt on the prospect of a successful launch of this without UEFA's backing, particularly before 2024, when the expected Champions League structure is expected to be revamped. Nobody's talking about it yet from FIFA or UEFA. Spanish publication Voz Populi is saying Barcelona and Atleti are part of this. Real Madrid's been one of the principal architects of it. PSG, Juve, Bayern are also likely to have been approached. Florentino Perez and Key Capital Partners, a Spanish finance house, are understood to have been driving forces behind this. Perez and Gianni Infantino have reportedly had talks about this. It's been going on for well over a year. I would assume that this felt like the time to strike while the iron was hot right now. And I think that's the main points. There's going to be a lot more that comes out of it. They would not pull out of their domestic leagues, at least according to this as you continue. Sources said the result of the new format, if it gets off the ground, would be to give England's wealthiest clubs greater leverage in future negotiations with the Premier League and with broadcasters and sponsors. They added that the possibility of outright club defections from domestic leagues was not on the new tournament's short-term agenda. But if you're going to be playing 30 games in addition to your domestic league, yeah, do the math and figure it out, because I don't really know. I'm assuming your domestic league, since you're not worried about qualifying for the Champions League anymore, because you would just be in every year in this thing, I'm assuming you would at times just play your kids in your domestic league, and if you finish 10th, you finish 10th. It doesn't really matter.
The TV aspect, EPL clubs have complained they're collectively losing more than £100 million every month, while many EFL clubs have warned they won't be able to survive much longer without fans in attendance unless they receive.
Now, hold on. That's a whole different thing. Yes, we know that about the EFL. The EFL doesn't really have anything going on in this. Let's not confuse things with this. The EFL, those clubs have nothing to do with a European Premier League. If that happens, they're never going to be in it. They're never in Champions League anyway. That's a whole nother conversation. That's where the Premier League teams should be helping them, or the FA should be helping them, but they can't because they need help themselves. That's another side of it. Now, if this competition doesn't just pull teams out of their domestic leagues, the lower divisions can still benefit from your Manchester Uniteds, et cetera, being involved. They would still be in the FA Cup. I would assume that would have to be part of this conversation, that they would not be allowed to pull out of their domestic competitions. But no, that's not the issue here. The issue is that nobody's making any money, and clubs are trying to figure out how to make more money. This is how they're going to make more money.
Yeah.
If you've got all these banks behind it throwing money at it to say, yes, we want this to get off the ground, and this is what we're going to offer you to do it, you're at a point where even your biggest clubs are looking at this and saying, man, this is the lifeline. And is their lifeline a different conversation than a lifeline for a Bolton right now, yeah, it is. It's a completely different conversation. It's about still being ridiculously rich versus keeping your doors open.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that your ridiculously rich clubs have not lost a boatload of money right now. This is going to be wild because this is the furthest along it's felt like this conversation has ever really been. We've heard things, we've seen the footy leaks, we've seen all that. This feels a little bit further down the road where you're starting to name financiers directly, where it's more than just one or two teams that are being mentioned. It's a number of teams and formats are being talked about. This feels like it is much further down that road than it's ever been.
And you'd mentioned the Champions League expansion. The Telegraph had an article yesterday where UEFA wanted to expand the competition from 32 to 36, increasing the number of group games for each team from 6 to 10, and that would be possibly in the 2024-2025 season, as you'd mentioned earlier with current timelines.
Well, that's the only way that UEFA can continue to try to fight off something like this, because they know this is coming because, again, this isn't new. This has been talked about. It's never gotten to this point. So I think their way to try to fight it was to say, well, we're going to have more games in the Champions League. And, of course, UEFA would make more money on that too, but they'd be able to give more. I don't know if UEFA is going to be able to fight this one off. If FIFA's backing it, and that's wild. That's the thing that's wild, and that was always my question was, okay, I understand these mega clubs wanting to do their own thing and make all the money for themselves. They don't want to give UEFA a cut. They don't want to give anybody a cut. I get that. But I always wondered because, okay, they're part of their national federation, which is part of UEFA, which is part of FIFA. Are they going to be blocked in doing something like that? But if FIFA's given them the go-ahead, and, of course, FIFA would be making money off of it, whew. Because that changes everything. That changes everything in the way the game's structured. I mean, we talk about the Club World Cup. You know, this is basically FIFA saying, yeah, UEFA, you guys just go sit down. You're not going to be involved in this kind of thing anymore. We're going to do it this way with these clubs. And, yeah, the winner of our competition will come into the Club World Cup because that's our competition too. And, hey, maybe if we feel like the money's right, we'll go down to South America and do the same thing with the clubs down there and create a FIFA competition that'll just rip apart the Copa Libertadores because, hey, money to be made. If you ever get to a point where CONCACAF or Africa or Asia, FIFA feels like they could make that money, well, they'll make that money. You know, I mean, if in this region, if Atlanta, if New York City, maybe the Red Bulls, if Red Bull wanted to jump on board with this, Miami, LA Galaxy, LAFC, probably Toronto, probably Seattle. If they all said, you know what, we don't want to do CONCACAF Champions League, but we'll form a league of 20 teams with the best 10 from Mexico and the best 10 from MLS, and we'll do our own thing, you're creating anarchy, basically. Because if FIFA allows it and opens up the door and says, yeah, let's go for it, everybody's going to look at it, and everybody's going to find their way to make money. Now, again, this is a desperate time from a business perspective for these clubs. As everybody knows in any business you're in right now, everything's changed. I get that. But this will change the landscape of the club game worldwide. No question about it. And it will go further than Europe because it will open the door to the biggest clubs in South America, the biggest clubs in CONCACAF, and that would primarily be the U.S. and Mexico. It would open the door to the biggest clubs in Asia to exclude others and say, you know what, we're going to create our own exclusive competition. We're going to sell it. We'll give whoever we need to give a cut, and there we go. But it's going to change everything.
Then let me ask you this. If this is a FIFA-backed plan, what can UEFA do to counteract this to make it more attractive to stay champions? All right, you guys had
nothing.
Stay.
Oh, nothing.
They can't do anything outside of the courts to make it more attractive to stay and
No.
cater to the super clubs.
No, because that's not how UEFA's built. UEFA can't say, we will allow you to create your own competition under our umbrella and exclude FC Basel and exclude PSV if they qualify and exclude Copenhagen and exclude these other teams. They can't do that. So there's nothing UEFA can do. You're going to fight it in the courts. They're going to say that FIFA's overstepping their bounds. I don't know those contracts. I don't know the way that the statutes are set up and who can organize what and who can do what. I have no idea on that stuff. But what can UEFA offer without they themselves kicking their members in the face by saying, yeah, Champions League where you've had to win your way in, not anymore because these big clubs want to do it their way. So sorry, Basel. Sorry, name your club. Sorry, we're just not going to have you anymore. Red Star, nope, you're not big enough. Dynamo Kiev, no, you're not big enough. We don't want you anymore. You can go play in the Europa League, which is nice, and we'll pat you on the head. But we're going to have this tournament for the biggest teams in the world, and you don't get to play them anymore. Sorry. UEFA can't do that from a membership standpoint because UEFA still has the European Championships from a national team perspective where they're dealing with the FAs. That's where they're stuck. That's why they've never been able to go as far down this road as these mega clubs have wanted, because they have to serve all of their members. This doesn't care about members. This is about who's the biggest clubs. That's who we're going to deal with. Look, I'm generally pretty understanding of the business side of things and how this goes, and if clubs can make more money, they're going to find a way to make more money, and that's not a bad thing in and of itself. But how FIFA can justify going around UEFA on this, and all of the knock-on effects, that's the part that I'm looking at is I know Manchester United, Real Madrid, Liverpool, et cetera, think this is the best thing for their bottom line. And it very well could be. I mean, they're not going to lose money doing it. They're going to make more money doing this than they would with anything else right now. That's accurate. But is it good for the greater overall football conversation, even in Europe? We'll leave the rest of the world out of it for right now, just in Europe. Or does it accelerate problems that are already starting with leagues and teams struggling? Does it accelerate that process of deterioration? I think it does in a massive way. I don't think this is the time for this. I don't know if the rest of the leagues and teams can truly deal with it. They're not going to go away. The league in the Czech Republic is not going to go away, for example. But is it going to be something that decreases in size and importance and interest in the Czech Republic? Yeah. Because if you are in Prague and you've got your local team playing down the street for an evening match in the Europa League, and you've got Liverpool and Bayern on TV in a game that you can watch from home with the best players in the world,
stay at home.
You're going to stay at home. So it's going to change the way the local leagues have to operate, and the ones that are nimble will find a way, and they'll find their niche, and they'll find their way to counter that. But it's not going to be easy, and right now is the hardest time for everything that is in any way smaller in the game right now. This is wild that it's gotten to this point. I didn't think it would get to this point right now. I did not. I did not see something like this coming. We talked about pivots that Liverpool and Manchester United could have if Project Big Picture doesn't happen. The pivot that everybody talked about was the EFL saying, oh, just break away from the Premier League and come join us, and we'll give you whatever Super League competition you want within our structure. Nobody saw this move coming with, oh, we don't get as much control of the Premier League as we want. Oh, fine, and we don't really need you much anymore. We're going to go do this. And sure, we'll put our U23s in your league. That's fine. Now what does the rest of the Premier League say and do, and how do you fight it? Are they going to try to kick these teams out? Are they going to try to say, well, if you're in that competition where you're not going to play in ours, then what? And then how do you sort it out? This is going to get wild, and this is going to turn into some things that we've never really talked about in the game. This is this is the biggest thing in the world's game, period. And to happen on a Champions League match day 1, yeah, this is what everybody's going to be talking about.
But can you afford, if you're a domestic league, to kick out? Can you afford to kick out one of your larger clubs that would be attached to this?
I mean, no, in a perfect world you can't. But what leverage do you have? Like, you don't have any leverage right now. Because if FIFA's backing it, it's not even like, it's not like the Colombian league in the, I think, early 50s where they were just saying, yeah, we don't care about your contracts. We'll pay you a ton of money to come here and play. And some of the biggest players in the world from all over the world went to Colombia to play at that time because they were getting rich, and the Colombian league didn't care about transfer fees, didn't care about anything. That was a long time ago with like an outlaw league, the league that the Atlanta Chiefs helped start, the NPSL in 1967. It was considered an outlaw league for a year because some teams didn't pay transfers and just said, yeah, we don't really care. We're not part of the world's game. We're not playing in anything that matters. So, yeah, sure, come. We'll pay you a lot of money. Come on, come play. This is the biggest thing since something like that because, these teams are big enough to find a way to just say, you know what, we don't need any of y'all. We can do our own thing. But with FIFA's backing, that's what changes it. It's not an outlaw league situation. FIFA's giving it a blessing if that's all true. Because now if you are Newcastle, for example, and Manchester United comes in, Liverpool comes into the door and says, you know what? Screw you guys. We're going home. And we're going to go and take all of our money and put it into this. And we have to field a team because we're told to by the national licensing body and governing body. Okay, that's fine. We'll have our second-tier team. They'll play in the competition. That's fine. You don't want that either. Now you're going to judge who our best players are? Okay, now you're going to – okay, yeah, that's how we're going to do this. All right, yeah, we're out. We're bye. The EFL will take us because they need us even if it is a depleted team.
Yep.
So you've got what – the Premier League – remember, the Premier League broke away from the Football League. So that's where they don't have a lot of leverage in this because that's how this played out. Remember, the rest of the league, it was the Big Six plus 3. They needed 5 more votes. Everybody else smacked it down. Everybody else celebrated, pumped their fists. They didn't see this coming because now they don't have leverage. If they try to kick Liverpool out of the Premier League, even Liverpool's branding is going to help a TV deal. Mm-hmm. If they try to kick Liverpool out, Liverpool will go to the EFL because the EFL will take a Liverpool U23 team in a heartbeat as its top team to play in the EFL's top division. The rest of the Premier League is in a bad spot here. So now what? And that's just in England. I don't know the different politics of all this in Italy and Spain and Germany, in France. I don't know how that's going to work for every other club in every other situation. But in England, because the Premier League broke away from the Football League and from the FA, they really don't have a lot of leverage.
And then you amplify that with the possibility of 5 teams being in this Super League. Not just Liverpool leaving the Premier League, but then you have those other clubs too.
Yeah, that's the conversation. Yeah, it's not just one team; it's 5 or 6.
Tafka says, "I see a problem with that big club thinking, though. Manchester United versus Real Madrid's a big fixture, but because the matchup is rare. If they start throwing out that kind of matchup every other week, then it loses its importance as a major spectacle. A tournament could work." But a Super League might fall victim to that phenomenon.
Possibly. The NFL would argue against that, and that's what you're kind of basing this on. Honestly, even in situations in Spain where you've had Real Madrid and Barcelona play in League and Champions League and Copa del Rey in a short period of time, you haven't seen that. Now, that was a kind of a one-off, but I'm not convinced of that. And even a somewhat duller Manchester United Real Madrid game is going to be bigger than Real Madrid and Cadiz or Manchester United and Burnley. There's just no way that it's not. Does it dilute it a bit over time? Sure. But it's still bigger than most of your domestic fixtures. There's just no way around it.
And he also says, hey, are we talking about expansion fees in Europe? For shame. Grassroots, exclamation point. Built, not bought, exclamation point. Plastic. Insert soccer cliche, insert fan trope.
Yeah, and that's going to happen, and I get it. I love the grassroots. Those tropes aren't going to change the business, and that they're two separate things. Personally, I feel like these clubs should have more of an obligation to help smaller teams. But if these big clubs feel like they don't need these smaller teams anymore, they can develop their own players in-house. They can go sign whoever they want worldwide and bring them in, and especially if they have a domestic team that is basically their reserve team, then you've got even more space for players to play. They don't need the Preston North Ends to send, David Beckham goes on loan to Preston North End for 3 months at a very vital time in his career to get games. You don't need that anymore. That's not necessary. And the way they feel like they'll help these teams, and I think this is some of the mentality, is that they would say, well, we'll help them when we pay them a lot of money in a transfer fee for their best player. That's how we help them. Over time, these clubs were built into what they are. The built not bought thing, yeah, they've had new investors come in and take it to another level, but they did build up to this point. Burnley's not going to do that. That's the other side, is that, okay, can they grow? And if you're in England, if you are Liverpool or Manchester United, for example, and you're part of the breakaway to form the Premier League, and it's grown, and it's great, and maybe you're looking at the reality of the moment and saying, well, it's great, but we're being held back by these other teams in the league that are never going to be us. They can't grow any bigger than they are. And honestly, looking at the landscape at the moment, the chances are they're going to fall back faster than we would. It becomes a bit of self-preservation and greed, no question. But they don't want to be affected by these other teams that are at bigger risk of falling back during this. And that's the scary part for me, is because that is an absolute issue, is that your smaller teams in first divisions in these major countries are at huge risk right now due to not having fans in the stands. Your big clubs can deal with that. They can deal because the TV property's so big and they've sold a sponsorship for everything, and they can find a way to make good on those sponsors. Your Burnleys, your West Broms, your Fulhams, how do they handle that? They can't. At some point, the bubble bursts. And this is a preemptive move to that. And it might accelerate the bubble bursting also. But the bubble is in trouble no matter what. And yeah, I just rhymed. I didn't mean to do that. It's just a fact. So are these big clubs just saying, you know what? We're going to get dragged down by these other teams if we don't jump on now, and we've already been talking about jumping anyway, and FIFA's going to back us because they're going to get a cut?
Are you going to say no?
No, they're not going to say no. They're going to do this. And then what happens? Well, you do this with one division, and then, hey guys, Aston Villa, man, you guys have done really well. You've got new investors. You've got a lot of money. You're in London. London's nice. We like London. We're going to form a second division of the European Premier League. You can join. It's going to cost you. How does that expansion fee look? That's where it will go. That's what is going to happen down the road. And look, you can argue the right or wrongs of it all day. I don't know if it can be stopped.
Taka says a European Premier League can work, but it has to have a pro-rel mechanism. If it's a
No, it
closed
doesn't.
league,
No, Tafka. The whole point is they want to get away from a pro rel mechanism.
Yeah, they want to have it all to themselves.
Yeah, they don't want any pro rel mechanism. You're thinking about it from a soccer perspective. They're not. They're thinking about it from an NFL business perspective. They don't want pro rel. From a soccer perspective, sure, everybody wants that. And that was always the caveat that UEFA would have is, okay, you want a guaranteed spot in the Champions League. All right, fine, we'll have some, but not all. And that was always the way to keep stringing these bigger clubs along. If they have FIFA's backing in this, they could care less about a pro rel component until the time comes where they can make more money by bringing more teams in. That's when they might think about it, which, funnily enough, sounds somewhat similar to the way MLS has been built. But they don't care about pro rel. It's not even part of the conversation. And I agree with you from a soccer perspective, totally. But that has nothing to do with the thought process here, and it won't have any implication on it. It just won't. They want away from it. They don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. Tafka says Europe as a whole won't accept a standalone, completely inaccessible Super League.
Nobody cares. Like, that's the thing. It's not about Europe as a whole. European soccer fans will. The people who will be watching these games will. Will the different FAs? No, but that's the problem here for UEFA. If this has FIFA backing, well, then welcome to the lawyers, because that's the only way this is going to get stopped. Because FIFA's jumping UEFA. If it's licensed by FIFA, it doesn't matter if the Czech Republic Federation doesn't like it, or it doesn't matter if the Scottish FA doesn't like it. There's no way around it.
Nathan Pugh, after posting a picture of a glorious sunrise this morning, says he doesn't care much for this European Premier League plan thing with a thought emoji.
I don't know. I don't have the same perspective as somebody who has grown up in England and followed any of these teams for their whole life or followed smaller teams. Because if you follow anybody other than these teams, you're not going to be happy right now. Are you still going to watch those games when they happen? A lot of people will. A lot of people who are built, not bought, hashtag, do watch Real Madrid and Manchester United in the Champions League. It happens. I don't have that perspective on it. It is dramatically going to change the landscape of the sport, though. Worldwide. First in Europe, but worldwide in the way everything works. It's going to consolidate power. It's going to consolidate money. It will hurt the smaller teams. Bernd Dursberger chimes in and says, the other way small clubs suffer from this is the cost side. Huge revenue for big clubs increase salaries for top players, putting pressure on smaller clubs to increase salaries or lose players. It's a movie I've been watching in the Austrian Bundesliga since the Champions League became big. Yeah, it would accelerate that. It would continue to separate that. It would, in some ways, put a little bit of a cap on how many big teams there are. It wouldn't be spread quite as wide as the Champions League. And then my wonder would be, okay, if you're not in that 30 players in 18 teams, that's 540 players, roughly. If you're not in that 540 player group, how much are you going to make with the best next team? How much could you make if you are at Stuttgart or West Ham or whoever, or Lyon if they're out of this, or Valencia? How much are they going to be able to pay? Is their ability to pay going to drop because of not making as much money in other ways? Like that's where it gets weird, and that's the part that I do not know what the trickle down is. But man, this is wild that it's gotten to this point.
The founder clubs, further down in the article from Mark Kleinman at Sky, Earlier iteration of the current project reported by German news outlets to have been drawn up almost exactly 2 years ago. 11 founder teams with a number of guest teams. As a part of that blueprint, the founder clubs could not be relegated for 20 years, although the remaining teams would be subject to being replaced depending upon their league position at the end of each season.
But that's the previous plan. This new plan doesn't say anything about that, right?
Not at the I haven't seen anything with the new plan, no.
That confirm that. Make sure I'm right here. That's the previous setup that they've talked about, that you would have founding clubs, but I think it was a smaller number of founding clubs and then guest clubs. This, the way that it was presented in the article, was 16 or 18 teams, period.
Yeah, boom. That's it. No guest clubs. This is the group.
That's the way it sounded like it was being portrayed.
Yeah.
Because if it's usurping UEFA, they're not trying to have teams go back and forth.
Yeah.
They're going to have 16 or 18 teams. I mean, if they have 5 from England and then, who doesn't make it? That'll be a good, oh, man. So let's say they go 5 from England. They go PSG. That's 6. They go Bayern is 7. They go Juve as 8. They go Barca, Atleti, Real Madrid as 3 more. That's 11. I mean, you're talking 5 or 7 more. Dortmund, Inter, Milan, Lyon would probably be fighting hard. Would you get you're not going to get a Benfica or somebody like that, I don't think. A Shakhtar? Like, this is... I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm trying to see the countries that were okay. England, France, Germany, Italy, Spain.
Yeah, that's the ones.
So, yeah. I mean, you're looking at what? You had 11, so you're trying to find 7 other partners.
You can find them.
Named 3. So, 4, you got 4 spots basically from your just initial thoughts, because you came up with 14 pretty quick. So 4 from those other elements to jump into this thing.
Which is not hard to find. It's just picking them.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe there is that component of the relegation thing. The way it was described as what's currently on the table didn't sound like it had any kind of 20-year relegation period. I mean, any which way, you're going to have 18 or 16 founders, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Byrne says there would have to be huge salary gaps between players at big and small clubs. The revenue gap would dictate that. Yeah, I think that gap would get wider than it is now, because the big money would consolidate with this league with a smaller number of teams, and everybody else would then make less in a big way, because the Champions League would not be anything close to what it is. If, for example, in England, if let's say they only take 5, I think they take 6, to be honest. But let's say they take 5, and let's say, sorry, Spurs, let's leave Spurs out of it for right now, and Spurs is the last team out. So then they're the biggest club in England and the biggest English club in the Champions League. That's a different conversation. It just is. If Sevilla is the biggest club in Spain left in the Champions League, if you're getting down to like Lille in France, it changes the paradigm completely. So that gap that's already wide just gets bigger and bigger. Yeah. Katie, this is where it gets hard, going through. Like, I would think Atletico Madrid would be in, but, Katie mentions Benfica, Ajax, Red Bull Salzburg, Shakhtar, Spurs. Like, who gets there? Who gets in? How does it go? For example, and Byrne gives us some insight from Germany and that gap already. For example, anybody who plays at Bayern makes at least €5 million. A few guys make €10 million. Lewandowski makes €20 million. At the smaller Bundesliga clubs, nobody makes the €5 million. That's kind of the baseline for Bayern players. That's how Bayern can sign whoever they want, and a lot of times for free. The players just wait out the end of their contract and then sign for Bayern. Bayern doesn't really care because they have a ton of players anyway. So they don't have to pay a huge transfer fee because, the player wants to play for Bayern. They're just going to run their contract down and then go play for Bayern. Juve has done that historically. where they say, oh, you want to come play for us? Well, you got a year left on your contract. We'll sign you next year. Just wait. We'll make it up to you. Like, we'll pay you good money when you come in, but just wait a year. It'll be better for all of us. And they sign guys on freeze. Whew. Those things are going to get really interesting. Look, I don't know. Can't wait to see where this goes, because this is going to be wild. I mean, just alongside of all of this, so just floating around in the ether around this, you've got all the talk about fans being back in the buildings. You've got English clubs pushing hard. Dave Cormack from Aberdeen made an appeal basically saying, we've done the test events. We are desperate. You've got EFL clubs talking about how they might not be able to last a whole lot longer without fans in the building. You've got clubs all over Europe talking about it. You've also got the Minister of Health in Italy saying, like, we can't guarantee the season's going to get finished this year. Like, there's, Scotland, I think, is meeting to talk about contingencies if they can't finish the season. So you've got those two threads going at two different times. You've got the mega clubs that would be fine in a TV format, a league for TV. You've got them making big moves that could push them further into that stratosphere. And you've got the rest of the game trying to figure out how to pay the bills. Oof.
Yeah.
Oof. It is, it's a wild one. And the more that comes out, now that it has dropped out there, the more that comes out from this is going to be fascinating, because now you're going to start to hear all the different things around it. Kefsey says, so there are unknowns, but if it's happening, then the best way to make it last is have that mechanism to get new teams in or out the underperforming. It's not going to be anything like a traditional pro rel, though, because that's the whole point. God, I could almost see them do something where they're going to say, oh, well, you have to like sell your spot or something, or somebody who's going to come in has to pay an expansion fee,
to
charter replace
NASCAR,
somebody,
basically.
Something. Yeah, it's going to be weird with it. It's not going to be anything like you've been bad for a year, or like in Argentina or Mexico or other leagues that use a 3-year average. Oh, you've been bad for 3 years? Yeah, you're relegated. I don't think it would be like that, because I think these leagues these teams are basically going to be like NFL teams in terms of a partnership.
Yeah.
They're going to form a partnership, and they're not going to want to give up that membership.
Yep.
That's what's wild.
The point from Kleinman, he says, such an American-style approach to European football would reflect the sport's shifting power base following an influx of U.S.-based owners into the English game during the last 20 years. Manchester United largest shareholders, the Glazers. Arsenal owned by Stan Kroenke. Liverpool owned by Fenway Sports Group, even though they're now in the process of being taken public through a SPAC.
Well, look, that's an easy thing to throw out there, but last time I checked, Florentino Perez is not American. Last time I checked, Juve's leadership is not American. Those two have been pushing for something like this for a decade. So stop the anti-American nonsense. You've got one of your biggest managers in Frank Lampard who had to be told, oh, yeah, you should probably look at Christian Pulisic's performances in Germany, where he developed a portion of his career. Don't look at him as an American. Look at him as developing in Germany. Oh, wow, he's good. Yeah, stop that nonsense, please. Oh, we don't like the American owners. Okay, then have your little small teams. Do that. That's fine. That's idiotic. That is total nonsense. Because Florentino Perez and Juve and Bayern have nothing to do with American ownership and have been pushing for all of this like crazy. So stop with that stuff. Stop. That bugs me, because it's what always happens. It's like, oh, the Americans are in. They don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm.
The ugly American idea.
Yeah, go ask Frank Lampard. See what he has to say about evaluating players. And, oh, yeah, he kind of missed it. Good job there, buddy.
You want me to thank somebody?
Sure. Why don't you thank Steve Apolinski, who I don't think is involved in creating the European Premier League. Steve's got some big-time juice, but I don't think he's involved in financing this one.
I'll have to ask him about that. Everything SDH and the SDH Network, sponsored by our great friend Steve Apolinski and Associates. wrongful death and serious injury attorneys, if this is a conversation that you need to have. A couple different ways that you can have it with Steve and the associates at Apolinski and Associates, LLC. Give them a call. Get a free consultation, 404-377-9191. Or you can shoot Steve an email directly, steve at aa-legal.com, or go to the website without the Steve at part, aa-legal.com. Large device or small, hit enter, hit return, hit advance, hit the arrow key, whatever works. Next screen that pops up is the home page. Low right-hand corner, a pop-up window pops up, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365. It might be Steve at the other end of the line on the pop-up window. We don't know, but it could be. He might have his own shift. You can discuss things with whoever's on the other end of the line on the pop-up window. Get your questions answered that way. For clients in Georgia and Alabama, over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine. It's one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. This is a road that you need to go down to discuss a wrongful death or a serious injury matter. There is one firm to discuss it with. The website is aa-legal.com. Talked too quickly.
It happens. It's all good. Nick throws in a technicality here, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know if this is what's driving Juve's interest in this. John Elkann is an Italian-American, and he, according to Nick, air quotes, technically is the guy who runs the Exor Corporation, which has the controlling interest of Juventus. I asked him if Elkann being there is what has sparked Juve's interest in this. I don't think it is. In any case, Bayern and Florentino Perez aren't doing this because of American ownership or investment. That's an easy target. Manchester City, I don't think, has any of that, and I'm sure they are on board with this. So, just saying.
Yeah, same way.
Just saying. Nick says they have a very American mindset from an operational standpoint. But I felt like that Agnelli and Perez have been the two who were really trying to push this for a long time. Now, look, maybe they've been usurped a little bit in the driver's seat of this by Liverpool and Manchester United. That's where it's being tied to out of the English press. We'll see about the rest of Europe and where they kind of fall on it. Who knows? We'll get into all this. If you guys have questions, and this has been kind of just a big bit of wild news, and it's taken up a lot of the show today. If you have questions about it, insights about it, comments about it, anything else in the soccer world, go ahead and share them with us. It is a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show, so you can do that via Twitter at SoccerDownHere. You can do that on email, soccerdownhere@gmail. You can also do it in the Twitch pitch, twitch.tv/SoccerDownHere. I see Craigie is hanging out in the Twitch pitch. Abby, Ricky Ricardo, Captain Ragamuffin, Katie Weaver's in there. So I'm scrolling back through. Burned, of course. J-Dub, lots of the regulars. Mazzano, lots of the regulars hanging out. KFC, Clayton Poss is here. He yells, I'm here. I see your hand, Clayton Poss. Thanks to everybody who hangs out and has these conversations. Lots of different things going on there about how many people are going to be in the building for Atlanta United this weekend. There will be fans in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for that one. How many is a question. Don't know. We're going to see. How many are in other buildings around Major League Soccer? That's starting to open up a bit. Joe Bost is hanging out in the Twitch pitch. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Joe.
You've got lots of topics today. You do have Champions League underway, and I'm assuming all of the CBS Sports properties will have quite a bit to say about this news, this bombshell this morning, on all of their conversation around it. You got CBS Sports HQ. I'm not sure when they go on. I want to say around noon with our friend Poppy Miller and Ian Joy and DeMarcus Beasley. You've got the CBS. Actually, they might be earlier than that because the first game's at 1 o'clock. I always forget about those early games now. You've got CBS Sports HQ, which you can watch for free. You can watch that streaming. You've got CBS Sports Network with content. And you've got the Golasso show there, the wraparound, the whip-around show. And you've got all the games on CBS All Access. So all kinds of different layers there. You've also got all the Copa Libertadores stuff tonight. I am wearing the Defensa y Justicia shirt today because they play at 6:15. They go to Brazil to face Santos, who is already qualified. They've already won the group. They can rest everybody they want to. That would be completely fine. Defensa has to win to clinch their spot going into the knockout round for the first time ever. It's the first time they've been in the Libertadores. If they don't, they're going to need help and weird things to happen with Olimpia of Paraguay hosting Delfín of Ecuador. That's the 6:15 games. You can watch on Fanatis. You can watch on BN Sports. I think Defensa's on BN in Espanol, and Olimpia and Delfín is on BN in English. So all the things. Katie says Grant Wall posted a handy Google Calendar to reference for all the soccer in the next 3 days. The other one I recommend too is livesoccertv.com, and they will tell you who has the rights to everything, and they're really good. They update stuff pretty regularly. They'll show you where you can get it, and if it's through a Fanatis or through a Fubo TV or et cetera, they'll tell you where you can get that too. So Live Soccer TV is what I always check.
And since you're wearing the shirt, I'll go ahead and tell you that it looks like the numbers between Santos and Defensa have evened out just a little bit. They're practically identical for juice boxes. It's kind of closed margins a little bit.
I'm wondering if the word is out that Santos is going to rotate their squad because they have nothing to play for. They're in the midst of the Brasileiro season. They're in 5th right now. They travel on the weekend to Fluminense, who's in 6th right behind them. They could very easily play their second stringers tonight, and that could help Defensa.
Santos a plus 168, Defensa is a plus 161, your draw is a plus 231.
Yeah, that's changed a lot. That has changed a whole lot. So it's got to be because of the possibility about Santos. It just has to be.
Yeah. Let's see. I've got later on in the show we can rehash juice boxes if you want. We went over them last night in soccer over there, but if you want to go for juice boxes for Champions League and Copa and anything else on your mind, we got them.
What else is on Twitter?
What else is on Twitter? Tafka says to people, don't dare blame the U.S. this on the USA. Single entity was necessary for the survival in MLS. NFL has zero international competition. It's money wanting more money.
Yeah, it's looking at the way the NFL has grown into what it is and saying, well, we can do that in our own way. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely there, but it's kind of silly to all of a sudden now, like, oh, let's blame it on the American owners. Well, you took their money gladly when they came in and bought the team. And you were very happy about the money that's been put into the plucky upstarts and even Manchester United, where the way that's been structured has been very different. They put a lot of debt on the club itself to get it done, which was highly questionable. People are not complaining about the resources. They're complaining about not spending the resources and not using them in the right way, but they're not complaining about the amount of money that Manchester United has made and spent. Same for the rest of it. So you can't really play that card now all of a sudden and be like, oh, yeah, we don't like this. This is bad. Let's go back to 1974. No, those days are gone. It's not happening.
A couple of other thoughts that are Atlanta United based that'll catch us up on the Twitter timeline.
Cool.
Shiva, on the Twitter side, thinks that Atlanta United already has a coach hired. They're waiting for off-season announcements. Would you agree?
I'm looking for it. I don't know about that. Is it possible? Sure, it is. You could have you could have an agreement in place with somebody who is currently working. I think that theory has generally been tied to hiring somebody in MLS, and I don't know who that would necessarily be. I don't know if there's an easy fit there. So who else could it be? I mean, I look right now on TV, Marcelo Gallardo is preparing for a match tonight with River Plate. Could it be a Marcelo Gallardo? I don't know if you'd have something in place already with him. He's got Copa Libertadores potentially if they go all the way through the middle of January. Do you want to wait that long? I don't know. Could it be somebody else in Argentina? Could it be somebody who's out of contract? If it is, I don't know why there'd be the waiting period. If they're already out of contract, why would you have it under wraps in this way? Unless you just don't want to distract from the rest of the season, but I'd be surprised it hasn't gotten out. I don't know. I mean, it's a theory. I don't really know what basis there is for it right now, to be honest. But is it completely impossible? No. I just don't know what the benefit would be for it to play out that way.
Then the other thought comes from Jake Michaels. Jake says, "Thanks for cooling me down yesterday, Jason. In true #overreaction Monday spirit, my take was a bit hot. We all saw what this team/franchise can be in 17 and 18, which is why it's so frustrating sometimes to watch. No doubts the front office cares and is working hard to get back. I'm very excited to see what moves they make this winter."
All right.
It's all good. That's what an Overreaction Monday is all about, or Overreaction Thursday, or Overreaction be Tuesday for Philadelphia fans and New England fans. We've had a few Overreaction Fridays from time to time. So, yeah, that's what they're all about. It happens. It's all good. Look, I don't have all the answers either. I'm just giving you my opinion. I'm not going to tell you that, your opinion has zero. It's completely wrong just because I'm right.
Rabble.
Rah! I have my opinion, and I'll tell it to you as strongly as I can, and I'll give you why I think that way. But please come to your own conclusions too, and push back, and we'll talk. That's what we do. That's what this game's all about. Because I don't think it's as cut and dried as a lot of other sports. There's a lot of areas for discussion. No, I love the back and forth. Bart sent me a message, and we were going back and forth about it. He's like, "I'm glad I got you riled up." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's fine. That's good." We all care about this stuff. If we weren't talking about it passionately, that means we don't care. So it's good. It's all good.
And Nathan Pugh says that, "Can we please leave us plucky folks alone?" As opposed to a crying child.
It's just too much fun, though, Nathan. I mean, you kind of opened the door to that one. No, I think right now Liverpool's going to get crushed for all of this stuff, and they shouldn't. The big clubs are going to try to do business for the big clubs.
Yeah.
I understand it.
What is it that Nick says? Out of chaos comes opportunity?
Well, yeah, I mean, but there wasn't chaos before necessarily, and there wasn't chaos before, and they were already looking for it. We're gonna see. I'm gonna see if we can get Nick on the phone actually right now, since we're feeling squirrely today, and it's kind of a weird one with all of this stuff. Nick says he can be dialed in, so we're gonna give it a go.
VR football has been left out of Arsenal's 5-man Premier League squad may have played.
And John is talking nonsense as we try to do this, and it's not making any sense.
Rats.
Yeah, pretty much. What's up, Nick Alifi? How are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We need your input on the Italian aspect of the European Premier League.
European Premier League.
We could hear him. Maybe we can't hear him anymore.
He muted off.
And you've kind of muted off, too, because you forgot how to use a microphone.
True. But, yeah, Nick's muted.
Okay. Well, Nick will try to hang out and all of that, and we'll try to get that sorted out. Because I want his perspective. He understands the Italian clubs and their thought process a lot better than I do, and some of the different ownership situations. It gets a little complicated. As weird as it can get in England, in Italy, it can get even stranger with things behind the scenes. I'd be curious, too, as to what Italian clubs would be a fit for this. We know Juve's been pushing for it. I would assume Inter would be right there as well. And Atalanta's not big enough. Napoli, I don't think, would get the invite. Milan historically would, but would they now is a question. I don't know, and I don't really know the answers to that.
Ricky Ricardo came in and linked to BR Football. Mesut Ozil has been left out of Arsenal's 25-man Premier League squad. May have played his last game for the...
There we go. Okay, can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes.
How are you, Nick?
All right, there we go. Good Lord.
Yeah,
that's what happens. Not enough coffee in the morning.
It's good that you're actually speaking into your microphone properly, unlike John, who still hasn't figured it out an hour and a half into the show.
Oh, man.
Really?
Yes, we can't hear you, John. I keep having to turn it up louder.
I pushed the microphone where you wanted it put.
No, when you turn it the right way, we hear you better.
And I did.
Oh man.
See, Nick, this is what I deal with on a daily basis.
Hey, look, it's okay. Jason, what we have to do is we have to give the old folks some room. Okay, we have to be very patient. Yeah, I heard that John's in the market for a nice Buick. He wants a Buick, or like an old Buick Century.
Wood paneled station wagon.
That's right.
Wagon Queen family truckster. Yes.
John's gonna have to yell the rest of the day because his microphone doesn't work for some reason.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's regarding the Super League.
Yeah, I need the Italian input.
Yeah, this is something that has been kicked around in Italy for a while. The known entities here are going to be Juve, AC Milan, Inter, and Roma has been on the fringe previously. Now that they've changed ownership with someone who has a little bit more cash reserve, I imagine that they're probably going to be included in those conversations. But there was a strange meeting not too long ago where Agnelli and a couple of other chairmen went to Milan to meet up. Now, keep in mind in Milan, number one, that's the economic hub of the country. That's where the stock market is. And so they were supposed to be discussing, from what was reported, television and broadcasting deals. But don't think for 1 second this wasn't on the table when they all got together. There's no reason that the American ownership of the Elliott Corporation, the Friedkin Group in Rome, we've talked about Juve being probably one of the more Americanized ownership groups just because they feed up into Elkan's group, which is called Exor. So they own Ferrari and they own Fiat and Chrysler and a couple of other brands. But this is something where if you have all of the sponsorship opportunity, especially in this market, do you want to be sharing that money with Sassuolo and Genoa and whatever, and Benevento or any of these other clubs that are coming up through Serie B? The answer is no, you don't. And it's a matter of time. Italy is going to have a very hard time accepting this. This is going to be yet again one of those situations where Juve, being the all-consuming monster that they are, people will just point and say, yet again, Juve is trying to manipulate things to their advantage. Mm-hmm. And Inter and Milan are almost going to get a pass just because the hate and venom will be so strong for Juve with this particular situation. But I think, honestly, Serie A in itself is in need of something. It's almost like when a fire has taken place in a small room and it sucks all of the oxygen out. That's what Juve has done for the past almost decade. And you have to find some way of reinvigorating things and adding life to the league. And it's going to be one of those situations where if Milan and Inter and Juve leave, Serie A will keep running. They don't care. Those teams will still play each other. And look for more American ownership to come into these leagues. Joe Tacopina, who was the previous owner of Venezia, he sold it to the chair. He sold Venezia to one of the chairmen of the I want to say the Dow Jones, and now Joe Tacopina is looking at investing in Catania down in Sicily to try to resurrect them up to Serie A. So there's still going to be a tremendous amount of investment here. What I want to see is how the TV dollars break out, because if you have this Super League, what happens with EFL? What happens with Serie A? What happens with the remainder of these other leagues? Because there's no way in hell Serie A is going to say, okay, Juve, you can come and do both. And there's no way, I think, that like you said earlier, that these other European leagues are just going to be okay with these teams jumping and doing this NFL-style model and then jumping back in or using U23s or anything like that. And make no mistake, this is the model. They want to go to more of an NFL style where the worst team still makes an insane amount of money. In our DM thread, I said that Verizon inked a $2.5 billion deal with the NFL. If you can get anything even remotely close to that for this European Super League, you don't want to share that with Burnley. You don't want to share it with Torino, clubs that either can't get out of their own way from a fiscal standpoint, or they just have a habit of making poor business decisions. You don't want to share that money with them. You want to keep that all in-house. And we can talk about promotion and relegation and the fans having the ownership of the clubs. Those days are gone. It's not there anymore. These are multinational conglomerates that own these clubs now, whether you like it or not. Fenway Sports Group, it's a sports group. They have subsidiaries. They have other investments. And this is part of their portfolio. And it's the same thing with Exor. Juve's part of their portfolio. Like it or not, they're going to be they are a publicly traded company. Dan Friedkin, Parma, the guy who owns Parma, Kraus, owns the Come and Go shops in the Midwest. And he has business interests all through the Midwest and now in Italy, and he owns a winery. This is part of a portfolio, and we can hate it all we want, but it's the wave of the future, unfortunately. I do want to see how FIFA navigates any sort of promotion and relegation, because with MLS, obviously, there's no promotion and relegation. They abide by the rest of FIFA rules, and they are still up and operational. So we can't pretend anymore that promotion and relegation is a requirement to do business, but it is a requirement to do business with UEFA. So this is a complete end around of the UEFA system, and it's just big money clubs flexing their muscles.
And I mean, if J.P. Morgan wants to throw in $6 billion
right
already off the top,
mm-hmm.
and they're looking to find a way to dive into something new, if you're a financier that wants to do things, wouldn't you want to do it with something that's a bunch of heavy hitters instead of sitting there and investing in the status quo?
Yeah, and the canary in the coal mine here is going to be the Elliott Group with AC Milan, because they are a vulture hedge fund group. They are notorious, for lack of a better term, globally, because they are people who bankrolled the Argentine government for a little bit and then allegedly bent them over the barrel, if you go by what some of the reporters have been saying. Mm-hmm. But one thing Elliott knows how to do is make money. They take depreciating assets that have an opportunity to be built up. They invest the minimal amount required and then flip it for a substantial amount of cash. And all, like JP Morgan, the rest of these groups are talking to people like Elliott and saying, what are you guys seeing here? What's the opportunity here for us to get our money back? And they don't care about butts in seats. They don't care about the beautiful game. They care about profit, loss, and margin. That's it. And so if Elliott is saying, hey, guys, this is great, we're all in on this idea, let's go in, I guarantee you the money will follow, because they are the people who know what they're doing when it comes to things like this. And if Elliott smells blood in the water for the collapse of some of the domestic leagues, there's something to it, guys. They've done their homework. They've done the research. They're just ahead of the curve in this. And so if you want to save European football, and it's the form that it is now, let me be very clear, the form that it is now, if you want to save that where you have these super clubs, they have to break away and do something else. For the localized clubs, meaning the Burnleys of the world, and I would keep hitting on poor Burnley.
I know. They were just the first one that came to mind.
Example, though. They're one of the least economically charged folks in the Premier League.
Right. And I'll use Torino and Venezia as another great example. They're the City B side, but there's not a lot of money there. And there is a hard cap for these teams. We can talk about a billionaire owner coming in and buying and investing, but it's the amount of work and energy and cash expenditure required to get them up to the level of a Juventus or a Bayern Munich. It's ridiculous. And so these clubs are going to be there. They will still get butts in the seats. In Italy, keep in mind that it is very city-centric. If you're from Florence, you are Florentine. Before you're an Italian, you are Florentine. And you look no further than the Calcio Storico, which is the UFC meets soccer tournament. You must be born in Florence to take part in this. You can't be from anywhere else outside in Italy and take part. So the clubs will survive locally. They will continue. You're not going to see probably crazy wild transfers with them, but it's going to survive and it's going to be fun and it's going to be enjoyable. But we're going to have to maybe work a little bit harder as international fans to find this content. Hopefully ESPN Plus continues and the Fenatis of the world continue to bring this great content to us. That's my hope. But if you want big time club, if you want Liverpool and you want Man City and Man United to continue like spending 80, 90 million euro to try to bring in these players, you're going to want this breakaway league. If you want to reduce that and have their big transfer be 12 million, 13 million, and that's, oh my God, go ahead and keep the model as it is, because as long as we are not putting butts in seats, there's very little margin in running a professional football club. And so right now most of them are running in the negative. So we have to make choices, unfortunately.
So let me ask you this, so we don't take up all of your day. If you look at the 18 teams, you're saying 16 to 18. Let's go big. Let's say they go with an 18-team Super League. 5 or 6 from England, I think, is an easy assumption. They've said 5. I think they'll end up taking 6. 3 from Spain, I think, is safe. We're not sure exactly how many from Germany or France, probably just PSG. How many teams from Italy would factor into this, do you think?
I would have to say you're probably looking at 3 or 4 tops. You're looking at Milan. You're looking at Juventus, Inter. Roma's the wild card to me. If Friedkin if Friedkin can offer up enough cash to make them a part of this, then I think that that's probably going to be your 4 teams right there. Napoli. Aurelio De Laurentiis is too much of a renegade. Yeah, he's a loose cannon. He has the money to do it, but he does not get along at all with Agnelli. They hate each other. You're not going to see any kind of goodwill there. Milan's corporate. Inter is tied to Chinese investment. They're going to follow the money. Roma is just going to want to be a part of the show. Rocco Camiso is going to get left out with Fiorentina. He can't even get a new stadium built because the city's dragging their feet on it. Lazio doesn't have the pull. Torino's a mess. Atalanta is, they are the plucky upstarts of Serie A, so they're not going to be a part of the show. I think you're looking at 4 teams tops from Serie A, but Milan has to keep the level of investment up. Elliott has to ensure that if they're either continuing their current level of investment, or they find someone who is going to be coming in. I believe Ronaldo was supposed to be coming in and possibly looking at buying Milan, but they need to ensure that the level of investment remains the same to keep Milan in that conversation, because they have a decade of losses. So it's going to be 3-4 teams tops from Serie A. Anything more than that, and I will be on the floor passed out.
And Colonel said that what he's hearing, kind of what you alluded to earlier, is that what we talked about in the article in Sky Sports, where they left the door open that teams would participate in their domestic competition. You start to do the math. How are they going to play 60 to 68 games a year? Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Colonel saying that it seems like the domestic leagues would not have these teams continue. I kind of feel like they're going to force the issue to get kicked out of the domestic league, as opposed to saying we are withdrawing from the domestic league.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Juventus is going to have to force it. Is going to have to force the issue. And
they're not going to walk. They're going to say kick us out.
Exactly, and they're going to, because they want to ensure that they are able to make the argument that we did everything we could to sustain domestic soccer in Italy. And when that doesn't happen, hey guys, you blame them. And I want to see what Spadafora, who's the sporting minister for Italy, has to say about this too. And we can't ignore that with COVID, that Serie A was pushing, we want to go. And Spadafora, who the sporting minister, said, no, I'm not signing off on this. I don't want to do this. And there were months that were lost to Serie A. as a result of this back and forth, even with all the deaths that were mounting up in Bergamo and in the Piedmont and in the Lombardy region. Serie A was still trying to push forward here. So there's already a divide between the government and the rest of Serie A. They're going to force the issue to be kicked out. And for a team like Juve, that's okay to them. They don't care because they're considered Italy, quote unquote, Italy's team anyway. And as long as they can source a majority of Italian national team players from there, they don't care. This is going to be more fodder for the Fiorentinas, the Cagliaris, the Genoas, and the Sampdorias of the world to just aim their venom at Juve, and it's going to be like screaming at a brick wall. It's not going to really do anything. The post, Italexit, if we want to call it that, is going to be one that's going to be ruled by the De Laurentiis of the world and the Atalantas and whoever survives from the Fiorentina. If Rocco Commisso can, keep in mind Rocco Commisso is already spending like $60+ million on a training facility right outside of Florence, so he's invested with this team. He may be sitting around and waiting to rule the future Serie A as it will stand. But it's something where they're going to force Serie A to boot them. There may be, because Italy is the land of kind of weird compromise, you may see a U23 team exist in Serie A just so they can say, hey, we still have Juve and we still have these young players coming through. We may allow the Milan Primavera to exist where they can move up from Serie C, Serie B, all the way up to Serie A if they're good enough. So we'll see how that works out. But I can see them making that sort of compromise in Italy that they wouldn't necessarily make in England because I think in England it's going to be scorched earth.
Yeah, I got a feeling it will too.
Yeah, between the top 4, top 6, whatever you want to call it, in the rest of the Premier League as it stands. That's going to be a bloodbath in England, though. Italy will find some kind of weird compromise to stay relevant. Germany, from a legal standpoint, is going to be the weirdest one to watch, just because the way that they sign those contracts, where you're signing a contract almost with Bundesliga as opposed to just Bayern Munich. And Bern, correct me on that if I'm wrong, but that's going to be one. That was the previous impediment to the Super League before, was the Germany legal requirements. That none of that exists in Italy. They're going to rewrite rules as required, I think.
All right, Nick, as you're on your way out the door, this is where you pimp your Snapchat or anything else you want to drop into the chat here?
If you want just soccer stuff from me, you can hit up @soc over there. That's SOC over there on the Twitters. Or if you want the full broadband, full spectrum of buffoonery from me, you can reach @Nicoliffi. That's NICKALIFFI on the Twitters. And that's really where I do most of my damage.
It's damage. It's true. It's accurate. That is a perfect way to put it. Thanks, Nick.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Mucho euro.
All right. This is going to be wild. We'll talk about all of it. I did not give Nick this news that Milan has the youngest squad in Europe by average age this season. That's kind of cool. Let's see if we can turn John's mic up so we can actually hear him again.
Why?
Because you're part of the show and people are wanting to hear you, and they can't hear you because you can't operate a microphone anymore for some reason.
It never moved.
And Colonel said the Soccer Down Here app just terminated the live show and started last night's Soccer Over There show. Nick has that power, I guess. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I don't know, Colonel. Sometimes when things go out, we can put them out into the universe, and then we're relying on other things to go our way.
Then we're relying on the universe to.
And sometimes the universe hates us. What can we do? Ragamuffin says, Zlatan is the Benjamin Button of soccer. That's the crazy thing, is they've got Zlatan in that team, and they still have the youngest average age of a squad in Europe. That says everything you need to say. Yeah. Okay, what else do we have on Twitter? And yell so people can hear you.
Well, we've got a couple of those, and we got fantasy to talk about, don't we?
Yeah, I gotta look at something, because I think I'm gonna have to complain about something very quickly.
Well, and Chris Ashley says, he says,
No,
please
that's different. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Because
I'll hold that thought.
That's not what I was talking about.
All right.
So, in all of the reporting, including the MLS communications emails, the match last night that was Philadelphia going to New England and winning, that was part of the previous match week. That was part of week 19.
Yeah.
According to MLS Fantasy, it was not.
Yep.
It was part of week 20, which is really stupid. Because you're saying it one way in one aspect of your business, and in another, oh yeah, you had Lee Wynn in your team. You might have wanted to change him, but no, he's part of your team because that was the new week. That was the new week yesterday. But I have the MLS Communications email, news and notes from around the league. Week 20 starts tonight. Not in MLS Fantasy, it doesn't. I know it's been a weird year. I know the calendar's weird, but man, they have messed up some of this stuff. What Chris Ashley was telling everybody was...
Oh, okay. So he got a, I guess it's an email.
Did you get an email, John?
I have not. At least not one like this. I haven't seen it yet.
I did.
Okay, well then I probably did and I haven't seen it. So it's probably in my spam folder somewhere. Dear Chris, as we look ahead to next season, we want to understand your experience with MLS Fantasy this season and how we can make it better. Please take a few minutes to run through this survey. Your input will play a huge role as we plan our gaming strategy for the future. Take survey.
That's a button on an email, John, that you would click on to go take the survey. You didn't need to read that part.
As Chris Ashley says, boy, do I have thoughts. And he's encouraging everybody else to participate as well.
Chris Ashley, share your thoughts on MLS Fantasy. I would like to hear them. I want a draft league. I want a draft league. I want a league that you can set up like NFL Fantasy where it is head-to-head draft league. That's fun. I don't enjoy the salary cap situation as much. I do like the way they've done it this year with it changing far more often. It keeps you engaged. You have to change your team more. You have to stay on top of it. That's really good. I like that. I like the no points for 2 games in a week. I like that because then that changes picking players based off quality and picking players who are playing more games in a week. That's not what this is supposed to be. I want the draft league option. I want to form a league with like 12, 14, 16 people and draft MLS players. That's what I want Major League Soccer. Por favor.
All right.
I think I'm in the minority on that, but that's fine. I want both, but I want the draft league option because that is more fun with head-to-head in that format, in my opinion, where you can't have the same teams. And you're not thinking like, okay, I've got to pick somebody different because they probably have Nicolas Ladero and Alejandro Pozuelo too. Like, I just have a draft league. So, okay, we have the draft, and one person has Pozuelo. Cool. I want that.
Okay. No, I would probably lose. I probably would lose my shirt if in a draft league.
You're not gonna sandbag anymore. You don't get to do that anymore. You're doing very well in fantasy, so stop that nonsense.
Well, it's because it's the salary cap league.
But you say you don't do well in fantasy. Period. Stop. You can't work a microphone, but you can make your fantasy team pretty effective right now.
Well, and I can't work a phone either.
No, you can't work a phone or an email, I guess, to get an email from MLS Fantasy, I guess. It's a good day for John. What else do we have on Twitter?
Let's see. Hang on. Rich Ransom says, if we contribute to a Patreon, can we get a 3-hour SDH then?
Y'all are trying to kill me. I'll tell you what, people wanting 3 hours. We will think about ways to format it that doesn't put me under a table. How about that? Let us get to the brainstorming side of things, and it's not going to be an immediate thing, but if there is interest and you guys are crazy enough to actually listen to 3
demand is there.
hours, if you guys are crazy enough to actually listen to 3 hours of us rambling on about Halloween candy and such, then we will find a way to deliver said content to you. But let us get creative with how we do it to make it not be quite so draining on us all the time. It might not be an everyday thing. It might be a little different, and we might have to figure out some ways to make it work. But let us brainstorm, give it some time. The recommendations have been noted.
Okay.
And yes, if we have a sponsor to do it, that would be even better, or some other format for doing this. We'll figure this out.
Taka says, amen, a draft league. And SDH can set up multiple leagues and take the winners from each league for a playoff league.
Yep. There's so many different ways to do that. Would love to do that. Also, I'm trying, and I was hoping to have it sooner than this, but it's been a little bit busy with the scheduling, with calling so many games here lately. I want to do a fun, very loose fantasy thing worldwide and start it for next month. So hopefully we'll have that by the end of the week. You will pick players. There's not going to be anything in terms of payroll. Basically, you will pick 1 goalkeeper, 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, 3 forwards from any league in the world, and you'll get points for goals, you'll get points for assists, you'll get points for clean sheets. That's it. Super simple. We'll have some fun with it. Since we're talking about all these different leagues worldwide anyway, we might have something like this and see what we can do with it. So stay tuned to the show and stay tuned to our Twitter account and how all that will work. And thank you to Jason Wright for managing our fantasy league in Major League Soccer and helping us get that one off the ground as well, because we're going to have some prizes for that too.
Yep. We have a game in MLS tonight.
We do. What are the numbers on this game?
Nashville SC at plus 127 at home against FC Dallas, who is a plus 2.25, and your draw's a plus 230.
Give me Nashville to win at home. Fantasy-wise, if you had any New England or Philadelphia players, well, they're locked in. And Ricky Ricardo said he got a notification last night that it was part of this week. I was honestly going by the communications that the new week started today. So, just saying. Good job, MLS. Thank you. So I have Lee Wynn in my lineup. I probably would have taken him out. And he should have scored a goal last night, and that would have been fine.
Yes.
He danced through 3 defenders and then put it over the bar. Thank you, Lee Wynn. But I have to figure out my team now because things are underway this evening. I have Walker Zimmerman in my team, and I'm going to keep him in my team.
As do I.
Goalkeeper. See, this is where it's hard because I have Tim Melia, and they're playing Colorado, which isn't happening, so I have to go to a goalkeeper now.
I picked Brian Rowe.
You picked Brian Rowe.
Miami.
Well, they're playing Miami. He plays for Orlando.
Check.
Okay, I'm going to have to do mine offline because I'm going to have to move some salary around to make things work. Who else do you have on your back line, John?
Miles, Brooks Lennon, and Segura going up against the Galaxy.
I think I'm going to keep Brooks Lennon in mine. I got to think on that. Got Roman Metaner was in my team from last week. They're playing Cincinnati. I kind of like that. He might stay. Midfield, who you have?
Brendan Aronson, who played last night.
Mm-hmm.
Latif Blessing against the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Pozuelo, Captain Vladero, and Caden Clark.
Okay. I should have put Caden Clark in my team last week. We talked about it. I didn't do it. I've got Lee Wynn, who I would have removed, but I'm stuck with it. I hope he has a better game against Nashville. I've got Lodero. I've got Valeri. I've got Espinoza. I'm probably going to – I don't think I'm going to keep Lodero and Valeri. I got to think on that one. Espinoza and San Jose, they play at Vancouver, which I kind of like. I think he might stay. Who you got up front?
Jossie Zardes.
Oh, yeah, you play like a 5-4-1 or something. I have Barrich, who plays Red Bull, which will probably go because they've been good defensively. I have Zardes against Houston, who's given up some goals. I had Gonzalo Higuain thinking he was at a really good number and maybe he would score against Montreal. He did not. He kind of really stunk it up and then got a red card after the match. So good job, Gonzalo. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You did not help me at all. So I'm going to have to work on that one as well. I will sort that out offline because there will be things to sort out in my team, especially since Lee Wynn's stuck in it. Thank you, Major League Soccer.
Wow. And then I have bench, obviously. For
Nobody cares about the bench.
Well, I got points from Danny Musovsky and Bresson. Gave me 11 last week, which was a shock.
How did you get those points?
By having Lee Wynn not play.
That would be it. Okay.
And so I think that's a Chris Ashley theory where you pick dudes who have like the lowest salaries on the board, you put them in your starting lineup, and then you swap out guys who actually will get points right at the last minute.
None of that made any sense.
He gets the lowest salaried guys and starts them.
Why?
So that way he can figure out who's going to be in starting 11s and then swap them out from bench positions, demote them to the bench, and start guys who are actually going to get points. He's won a lot of fantasy, apparently, with this strategy.
I don't know if you're explaining the strategy properly because I'm really confused. Why don't you just put the cheap guys on the bench and put your starters in the starting lineup?
I think because he waits until the end to put guys in. He waits to get the starting lineup figured out. He doesn't set it in stone, and he'll wait and do late substitutions.
If anybody has any understanding of any of
Chris
that, please
Ashley,
explain
it better than I do.
Please explain it because I'm confused. What else do we have on Twitter?
Chiefs coach Steve says, 3-hour show, don't tease me.
I knew this was going to happen. What else do we have?
No, we're caught up. That was it.
Steve. Mazzano says, Campeones Cup needs to be expanded. Instead of a one-off game, it should be a 4-team semifinal with home and away legs comprising of the two most recent champions of MLS and Liga MX. That would be really exciting. That would be a way to do it for next year since Seattle didn't get to participate in Campeones Cup. And I don't know if Mexico did their Campeón de Campeones match. I don't think they did. See, Mexico has two champions, so that would serve their purposes. Then both of their champions would go into Campeones Cup. And what do you do? Maybe in general years, the MLS Cup and the Open Cup champion, if they want to throw a bone there, or if it wants to be an all-MLS affair, the MLS Cup and Supporters Shield winner goes into it, and you do a semifinal and a final MLS versus Mexico matchups. I'm good with that. I like it, Mizzano. I'm good. Cash, money, it's all good. That'd be exciting. I'm in. But instead of the two previous ones, so that way a team gets into that twice, I wouldn't do it. It'd be the two champions from Mexico versus the MLS Cup and Supporters Shield winner. And the Supporters Shield Foundation will be very, very excited about that. Also, and Jason Nix points out, did you see the probably about face from the Supporters Shield Foundation? They're reevaluating their position. Apparently, best to get it right. I'm not going to be mad. I think they're going to put the vote out to the full membership instead of just the board. They've said that they might not follow the vote, which is not a good thing to say. But maybe they'll do it. It's a trophy that the fans made up to honor the best team in the league. Because when MLS started, this is important, and I think it's been lost in the whole discussion. When MLS started, they did not have a trophy for the league champion during the regular season. They didn't have it. They had the MLS Cup champion. They had the conference champions, the conference championship series at that time. Those teams got a trophy. That was it. They didn't have anything like a supporter shield. And the supporters said, hey, we want to honor this. I think at first they were going to call it the Scudetto. They were going to play off of the Italian side of it. They ended up calling it the Supporter Shield. This was all done on an email list and conversations back and forth, and people donated to actually have a trophy made. And the Tampa Bay Mutiny won the first one. It's created by the fans to honor something that wasn't being honored in that way. MLS has embraced it and made that award mean something by giving them a spot in the Champions League, and I think there's bonuses attached to it and different things, which is great. But it's a trophy created by the fans to honor the team that had the best regular season. That's it. That's it. You can look at schedules throughout MLS's history, and they have never been truly balanced, ever. You've played everybody prior to this year, which this year you weren't going to play everybody anyway. That's my problem with it. There was no statement made before the year when the schedule came out, and Atlanta wasn't going to play Vancouver, for example. There was no statement about, well, the schedule isn't balanced enough for us to give a trophy out anymore. We're not going to do that, which would be kind of obnoxious. It's more obnoxious to do it in a year where you literally can't play everybody, and you can't have the balanced, unbalanced schedule that you were going to have to begin with. It was a poor decision by a group of people that maybe took the trophy that they made, and maybe the people that are involved in it aren't even ones who know the full story and were involved in donating to the original trophy being made. But I think they took it a little too seriously there. It is a trophy for the supporters of the team that has the best regular season, no matter what the schedule that's played. They deserve to get that trophy. It should be awarded. It should not be withheld for really no good reason, to be perfectly honest. There's not a better way the MLS should have structured their season this year. It was already going to be unbalanced. You already weren't playing everybody. So in a pandemic, to pull it back, I'm sorry. I think that was a very bad decision by the board of the Supporters Shield Foundation, and I'm glad that they are revisiting it, and I hope that they make the right decision, because whoever wins it deserves it. And it's not MLS. It's not MLS's part. You can blame MLS for what they did on fantasy, but it's not MLS's part here. This is on the Supporters Shield Foundation for doing this.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very short-sighted on their part, and I thought that they missed the boat on the importance of awarding a trophy. And I'm with Greg Vanny in this. We had the Vanny quote yesterday, and I'm with Greg Vanny here. It's for these players across the board who have busted their collective ass to put a season on, and then to not have a particular trophy awarded to them because the group didn't want it. It's just short-sighted for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. It's just, I hope they get it right. I understand, I think, because all of us do this. We get so wrapped up in all this, and we take ownership of things that, look, this was a trophy that was created to fill a gap, and it was a really cool story when it was created. If you get a chance to read how everything came together, it was truly driven by fans of the game. It was really, really cool. But the game is the game, and the players are the players, and the teams are the teams, and they are separate from the fans, the supporters. You're there to support them, and this group should be supporting whoever had the best season. Give them the trophy that you created to honor that, and don't withhold it. It's not even punishment. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't diminish a trophy that was made up by supporters to give it out in a year like this. Just give it out. It's okay. What else we got on the Twitters? Anything that we've missed?
Let's see. Checking. No, we're caught up.
Katie asked if you got a Burrow fax about your MLS fantasy survey.
Probably.
Do you even know where a Burrow fax would come in?
Which email it was sent to.
Burrow faxes don't come in via email, John.
Oh, then I'll just check over my my printer and see if it came in.
They don't come in as a fax either. We've covered this. Remember, it's like a telegram.
I have not seen a carrier pigeon come to the house. Although we did have woodpeckers that we had to fix the stucco on the front of the house because they pecked a hole in it for the second year in a row.
Nice. Okay.
And I still can't send texts from my new phone.
can't make microphones work. You can't send text from your new phone. Man, it's a bad day for you, John.
A bad 24 hours, pretty much.
24 hours is a day, John.
Okay, so it's been a bad day then.
Cassie says he got saved on last week by having Colorado on their COVID-related bye. Was able to pick up points on the weekend, probably from the bench players who replaced players who would have played Colorado. That's a different one. I remember something Chris Ashley was saying about it. I think we went back and forth on that strategy about having guys who aren't going to play in your lineup, and it didn't really make a lot of sense because you don't get bonus points from your bench players moving into your starting lineup. They just replace players who don't play.
Well, what you can do is you get the DNPs that are like the $4, the $4 millions.
But John, this is the point. I don't know why this is hard. Just put the $4 DNPs on your bench. It's the same thing. You don't get bonus points if somebody who is $10 on your bench replaces somebody who is $4 in your starting lineup. It doesn't change. It's the same amount. Put the $10 person in your starting lineup. Put the $4 person on your bench.
But I think that's where
there's
Chris
no but.
changes
things. It doesn't change anything. There's no change to that. The points are the same.
No, the $4 dude doesn't change, but the guy that you can pick for the bigger salary could change depending on matchup. I think that's where Chris was going.
None of that makes any sense anyway. I'm not going to play the Billy Madison clip on you because I've played it too much in the last couple of days. Ragamuffin says if they had a draft league, I'd play Premier League Draft League. They have. They're just not like on the major sites. Done one before. I like it better. I absolutely like it better. You've got to dig for them a little bit to find them. I don't know why soccer hasn't embraced the draft league. The draft league's the better way to do fantasy, in my opinion. I've always felt like that. I wish MLS would offer it. There's been a couple. We did one like the first year of SDH. We did a draft league through some English site that was going to do it, and it wasn't all that well supported. It was fun to do. I think the live draft function kind of stunk, and then they didn't do it the next year. They didn't offer it. I want them to do a normal draft league. I want to be able to draft like I would on Yahoo Sports or on ESPN or whatever NFL draft fantasy league I have. I want to be able to do that, Major League Soccer. Make it happen, please.
Make it so.
Please make it happen. Cassidy says, in lieu of 2020 attendance, best way to support Atlanta United is to pay up for the 2021 season? Yeah, I mean, look, when you talk about teams that are struggling, I don't think Atlanta's going to be one of those right now. You're lucky in that you have an owner who is in good shape and isn't being directly affected by the pandemic in ways that some other ownership groups are. That's a good thing, but it is a business. I do not believe anybody has been laid off from any of the A&B companies, which is great. Is that long-term sustainable without fans in the building? No, it's not. For anybody, it's not. It's just the reality of what we're all looking at. If revenues aren't there, like there comes a point where you have to figure out how to change it. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one way. I've done this where, I can't support every team that I'd like to support, but where I can, I will buy a T-shirt from somebody. I'm not really as big of a scarf person because I don't have as many places to put them, so I'll buy a T-shirt. I'll wear a T-shirt on the show. I mean, I've bought a Little Rock Rangers T-shirt. Those guys have been good to us over the years. An Asheville City shirt. The 40-watt in Athens can't have shows right now. I bought a 40-watt shirt. It's like buying a ticket to a game. There's no games. There's no events right now. So, think about that kind of stuff. I mean, merchandise does help the bottom line. Buying tickets for next year does help the bottom line. And not everybody can afford that right now, but where you can, this is the reality of operating sports at the moment. It's not easy. So if sports, live events, anything. I mean, if there's something you can do to help these teams that you are passionate about, do it because it is needed.
Yeah, that's, when you see Jason wear T-shirts, you see me wear T-shirts, you see me wear hats, you see me wear jerseys. It's all about part of that support system and the support mechanism that's there. So, that's how I try to help support as many teams as I can that aren't local, that you can't go out and sit there and have something sent to you. You can't go out and shake a hand, dap an elbow, do whatever. So that's why you have all this stuff here, and that's why I try to represent as best we can.
That's all we can do. Mazzano, we are not putting the third hour behind a paywall. We will not do that.
No.
Yes, we have a Patreon that basically keeps the SDH lights on, but we don't put content behind paywalls. We've made that decision. We're not going to do it. Yes, we do need your support like anybody else. That's why we do scarves and hats and things from time to time. This is a time-consuming thing. It is. I'd much rather spend my time doing this than going out and finding another job to do things with.
Amen.
So this is what we're trying to do, but we try to be as realistic about it as we can. Like we want sponsors, we want advertising, we want to find ways to make those kind of partnerships work. Things like Fanatis has been really good. Things like Prize Picks, which we still have our affiliate code there, SDH, if you haven't signed up. They're offering all kinds of stuff going on right now with football, with college, with baseball, with the World Series, all kinds of different elements going on with Prize Picks, and you can use the code SDH if you're a new member there. Those things help. Those things do help, but we're not going to put content strictly behind a paywall. Our Patreon members will get some stuff a little early sometimes. They got a chance to hear the Tony Annan interview, for example, about 12 hours before anybody else did. Little things like that we try to do, but it is not like a lot of Patreons where it's everything behind the paywall and a few things publicly. We're going to put everything out publicly, period. That's just the way we've always functioned and the way we always will. But yes, if we're going to do a third hour, that's even more time.
Yeah, and get it paid for.
I'm going to need tea, and I'm going to need different things to make that work and more content, and probably bring some extra people on to help, and I'm going to have to find money for them. So, yeah, there will probably need to be some fundraising element to make that happen, but it will not go behind a paywall. I promise you, promise you, promise you. Ragamuffin will give us $1 to do a third hour. That's a start. It's a start. Hey, you got to start somewhere. Yeah. Okay, Ricky Ricardo with his fantasy team, and this is who you need to follow, him or John. Don't follow me. I'm getting better this season, but I'm still climbing out of a hole.
Take your first 2 weeks out of it. You've had
but I'm still in the 20s. I'm having problems getting out of the 20 region, which is good. I'll take it, but
especially after that start.
No, I'm not talking about in the 20s overall. I'm talking about week to week. I'm in the 20 range. So that's good. That's good. But John's been better. Ricky's been better. Follow them. Ricky's got Joe Willis in goal, Brooks Lennon, Romney, and Kessler in the back, Montero, Valeri, Pozuelo, Piatti in the midfield, Bunbury, Morris, and Zardes up front. And he dropped Ladero because he's so expensive. And, yeah, that's the problem. If you're going to go super expensive, I think you probably got to go Pozuelo. If you can find a budget option, you might be able to squeeze Ladero in as well.
Yeah, that was how it ended up for me with Ladero and Pozuelo. Finding Caden Clark at 7, that helped out.
Ricky said about the bench thing and the way you were trying to explain it. He says that's a league thing, John. It's called a switcheroo. Switcheroo and keeperoo is a thing, but this is not a great explanation. I think, this is not a great explanation according to Ricky. I would agree because I was confused.
Color me shocked. But yeah, for me to keep Ladero and Pozuelo, I got rid of Jordan Morris this week and brought in Jossie Zardes, which bought me another $2 million, so I could work that around. And that was when I brought in Aronson and Blessing and a couple of other folks. And there are some guys that you find that are in the 4s, like Wondolowski and Masovsky and Bresson, and those are guys that you can have for insurance in case something happens with your lineup.
Yep, that is true. I'm still taking your mate suggestions, by the way. I re-upped on Cruz de Malta for now, but I want to try a new one. I've got the Cruz de Malta and I've got the Canarias Serena, which is a very different kind of style. But if anybody has suggestions, I will take them. All right, Mazzano's cool with our compromise on the Campeones Cup. 2 reps from MLS, 2 reps from Liga MX. 2 legs each round. I like it. 2 legs in the final. I like it. Home and away actually means something other than just being thrown out because it's one game. I like it. I'm in, Mazzano. Let's make it happen.
Make it so.
Let's make it happen. Kefsey about the Supporter Shield. Congrats to Toronto. Any talk of extra Canadian games is a silly narrative. They played more than the Canadian Cup, and they're not guaranteed wins there. They lost it last year. That's accurate. I mean, I think their points per game is actually better in the non-Canadian games. So it really doesn't mean anything. Let's see what else we got.
There's my email. Okay.
Ricky says, who would get the CCL spot if Toronto wins the Shield? I'm guessing whoever's next. The next best record would. So they would replace that spot. Mazzano thinks you're suffering from sodium-induced dementia.
So SID?
Yes.
There would have to be a lack of sodium-induced
You drink
sodium deficiency.
You get your sodium in your Mountain Dew.
But it's like the 6th ingredient.
Ay, Dios mío.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 6th ingredient.
Jason Nix, talking about fantasy format, says, any draft league obviously locks you into a certain group. Yes, you can trade, etc. I think they found the cash leagues keep more people involved throughout the season. I don't know. Maybe so, but I think if they have the option, I've found it with the NFL, for example. When I've played NFL fantasy football, I've been more engaged with the league as a whole. When I'm not playing it like right now, I'll watch the Falcons, and that's about it. I just don't care about the rest of it. If I'm in a fantasy league, I'm watching more, I'm consuming more. For MLS, I would want that, even if it means, okay, you've got your 16, 15, whatever your number is for teams in a league, and, yeah, you're kind of locked into a group. But I think you have to dig in deeper then, because you're looking, like Caden Clark starts to pop up and score goals. Ooh, everybody wants to put in a waiver claim on him. You're looking for that edge, so you're having to go deeper on the information. I know the NFL much better when I'm playing fantasy football.
How likely is it that you would recommend MLS Fantasy to a friend or colleague? 1, not likely. 10, extremely likely.
Well, that's for you to answer.
Well, but I mean, it's kind of a rigged question because we do a show and we're a network about soccer, so it's kind of rigged. So it'd have to be like a 10, wouldn't it?
It's a basic survey that went out to everybody, John.
What do you like most about MLS Fantasy? Winning my league. What do you like least about MLS Fantasy? Ooh, let's see.
While John does his survey, since we can barely hear him anyway, Mazzano has pointed out something in the Twitch pitch that I have not seen. I mentioned the mate suggestions, and he goes with a clean, peach, organic, sparkling yerba mate that is in a can, which is wild and baffling. It is very cool because it is for a good cause. Clean cause. Every sip supports recovery. 50% of the profits support recovery from alcohol and drug addiction, which is awesome. They've got a watermelon mint, a blackberry, a lemon lime, and a raspberry. This is totally different and so weird. I would like to try it. I would like to try the watermelon mint and the peach organic. I would absolutely try those. I have tried the guayaki soda yerba mate drinks that are pretty common now. Like Quick Trip has it, most gas stations have them, Kroger's, Publix, etc. I don't like them as much as mate. I don't get as much of a caffeine rush from it, which I want. So, not a fan of the guayaki ones. I would like to try these flavored ones and see how they go. So I'm intrigued, Mazzano. Very different thing, but I'm intrigued.
What features would you like to add, or is there anything about MLS Fantasy you'd like to change?
Dios mío.
Well, I mean, we said like the a straight player draft.
J-Dub asks if you are crowdsourcing your fantasy survey.
Yeah.
Aye, aye, aye.
So that way we can all have the same answers and give them the same information.
Okay.
So what features would you like to add, or is there anything you'd mentioned that just a straight-up player draft, right?
I would like to have a draft league option.
Draft league option.
You know, I have my own survey. I can put my thoughts in my own survey.
Sending the same information from multiple surveys gives it the idea that a lot of folks have the same opinions. It's just reinforcing opinions so they can see the same things.
So you're trying to tell people what to think.
I'm trying to say that we should all have the same information and submit it at the same time. I'm not telling people what to think. I'm just saying that we should all say the same things if we have the same concerns, so that way the wording is right and it doesn't get locked into this notion. Okay, one person saying one thing, one person saying another. You have two people saying the same thing, the message gets out.
Cassie says, we're doing John's homework?
We're doing all of our homework.
Ricky says 1984 Hive Mind.
Let's see. I was in high school, so yeah.
I'm assuming Ricky might have been talking about the book.
Like Orwell. Okay.
I'm assuming Ricky, maybe. Because I don't remember 1984.
Because the last time I read 1984 would have been high school.
Okay. That's a good save. Pacine says you are a socialist.
Actually, I voted for candidates from all three parties last time.
There you go. Good job. All right. Things are totally degenerating. John needs help with a survey. You can...
No! That is not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you're saying.
I want all of us to put the same information out there. So I'm just wanting to get the phraseology from your initial discussions that you're going to put on your survey and put it on my survey too. I'm helping you out. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I want the wording to be the same. So they're not sitting there and saying, okay, well, two people are saying different things. I want the wording to be the same so we're all giving them the same message about draft league options and things like that. Breaking news?
Yes. From the Daily Mail. This is interesting. David Coote, who was the VAR for the Everton-Liverpool match, he was dropped from referee and VAR roles for the first time this season after forgetting he could review Jordan Pickford's tackle on Virgil van Dijk. He will be the fourth official as Manchester City plays West Ham instead.
Okay.
That's a big deal.
It is. I mean, the fact that you're no longer getting to do your job and you're going to be doing other things since you missed something so horribly.
That's a big deal. That's something that we've talked about with Major League Soccer and wondering how this goes. I'm glad they've covered that and announced that, or at least the Daily Mail, uncovered that and put it out there, because that's a huge mistake. That should have been a red card. It would have affected the result of that match. Liverpool should be furious, even if they are plucky upstarts, Nathan Pugh. They should be furious. They got screwed. The tackle's the tackle, and it's a suspension, and he should be suspended for the maximum amount for that tackle. If it's 3 games, it's 3 games. He's not going to be suspended for anything.
Yeah.
Coote, in Sports Mail revealed on Monday that Coote thought the offside against Van Dijk on Saturday, which he checked, nullified what happened afterward. And that was some of the initial conversation. Dale Johnson from ESPN had that. It could have been red carded as well as being offside in that situation. Liverpool very upset that Pickford was not punished, demanding urgent clarification on the way it was been handled. Liverpool insiders say they were told on Saturday that Coote was, quote, too distracted, unquote, by the offside check, and therefore did not look at the possible red card for Pickford. The PGMOL boss Mike Riley spoke to the club on Sunday, claiming that the match officials did review the challenge and deemed it not to be a red. There's been back and forth on that.
That wasn't a red?
Well, they didn't give a red, so no, it
No,
wasn't a red.
but I mean, it should have been.
That's what you think, and that's what a lot of people think, and that's what I think. But referees do review things and disagree with us. That does happen. The question, the bigger one to me, you missed it, you missed it, you got it wrong, you got it wrong. If you didn't look at it, then you do not know the rules, and you can't be in that position.
Yeah.
That's a whole different conversation, and that's where I would like to get some clarification, because it's been back and forth. Did he look? Did he not look? If he looked and didn't get it, then that's incompetent. If he didn't look because he thought he couldn't look at it, then that's just not even knowing the rules, and that's a whole nother level of ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Jason, it's a little confusing because the initial talk coming out of it, and this happened right after the game. Dale Johnson at ESPN, who is very clued into the referee VAR situations, and he breaks it down really, really well. He initially, during the game, said that you could not give a red card there because the offside nullified everything. Now, he corrected himself afterward, and he said that he was told it was not reviewed because they were reviewing the offside. That's what Liverpool people are saying they were told on Saturday. Now, the Daily Mail is saying on Sunday, the PGMOL told Liverpool that, no, it was reviewed, it just was decided it wasn't a red card. I don't know where the truth is in those things. Those are all being reported from sources. So I'm not exactly sure. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But, yeah, he is not working as a referee or a VAR this weekend. He will be a fourth instead. I would like to see this happen more often with MLS and USL, where a referee not just has a night that we disagree with the way he managed the game. I'm talking situations where pro comes out and says they did something wrong. Like the really stupid one from a Columbus game where they said that the VAR should not have sent it down for a review, that they overstepped their bounds, that it was not a clear and obvious error, but the referee reviewed it and said it was an error. Like, what are you doing with that, pro? That doesn't even make any sense. They shouldn't have reviewed it because it's not a clear and obvious error, but the referee says it's an error. Like, then obviously it was wrong. That's just a dumb argument and further confuses everybody with it. But where referees are punished, because it's punishment. Look, he's not going to make as much money as a fourth official as he would as a referee or a VAR. It's less stature. Those things are accurate. We should know that's why. And that's okay. It doesn't mean he's never going to referee again. It means that he got something wrong and he's being punished for it. We should know that. So when referees get things wrong in matches, they shouldn't be working the next weekend. And if that means somebody new comes up and gets that opportunity, let's do it. Let's do it. Are you going to have some bumpy rides with that too? Yep. But let's do it. We need to know these things. These things need to be reported a little bit more. Right now it's really hard with MLS and Pro because assignments are coming out like literally the day before games publicly. Sometimes the day of games publicly if it's not a game you're following. That's not typical. Usually they come out a few days before in a normal year. I do think it's much more of a challenge with travel this year, which I totally get. But still, when referees are pulled from assignments, we should know, and we should know why. Because that increases the accountability, and we know that, hey, referee screwed up last week, they're not working this week. Okay. I'd like to know that anyway. Maybe I'm just being nosy.
Jarrett passed along this note from Dutch football, Europa League. AZ Alkmaar has announced that 13 players have tested positive for coronavirus. However, their game with Napoli is set to go ahead unless local authorities stop it. Squad will travel to Italy on Wednesday. Squad will also be announced Wednesday morning. We'll then get a clearer idea of which players are affected.
Yeah, there was concern that they were going to get to a certain number that they wouldn't have enough eligible players in different groups. I guess there's like different tiers of your roster, and if you're missing a certain number of first-team players that you're not allowed to play. I don't think they've gotten to that. I think it's spread through different parts of the roster. So it's really close, though, and we'll have to wait and see. And again, welcome to 2020. This is going to happen more and more. Doesn't look like you're going to have any Champions League games that are affected. over the next 2 days. Doesn't look like you're going to have any Copa Libertadores games in South America that are going to be affected over the next 3 days. Europa League's Thursday. We'll see if you have any others that could be affected by this, but yeah, it's going to happen.
We are still caught up on Twitter, so you want to go get some lunch?
Yes, we are caught up on the Twitch pitch as well. People are still saying that people are going to say different stuff on their survey, and it's okay.
Oh, that reminds me. MLS Fantasy 2020 fan feedback. Your response has been recorded.
Good job.
Awesome.
That means it's time to go. So we'll be back tomorrow. The rest of this week, we got trivia Thursday night, 7 o'clock. Fundraiser for Soccer in the Streets. John's playing. He is. It's multiple choice. It's multiple choice. Pick C if you don't know the answer. Multiple choice. It's very easy. It's very fun. Mike Conti is back on the game on Thursday. We are trying to raise as much money as we can for Soccer in the Streets. It's hard right now because a lot of their fundraisers are people-driven and event-driven, and you're not able to drive events right now. So that's a reality. So these trivia events are going to be monthly. They're just a fun way to hang out, talk soccer, and raise a little bit of money for the kids. And you got a chance to win stuff, too, which is very cool. Working on a few prizes going forward for that as well that are kind of unique. So stay tuned on that. But Thursday night, 7 o'clock, you will join on Zoom, and you will play using the Kahoot app. It will be a good time, and you guys can compare notes on who wins from the SDH universe and who finishes last and who should be pointed at and mocked. You do this with fantasy, too. You're sandbagging again. I don't believe anything. I don't trust you anymore. That's Thursday. We got stoppage time moving from Wednesday to Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Mike and I will talk Atlanta United there at facebook.com/929thegame. We'll be back in the morning for a Wall Pass Wednesday. We will have a lot to talk about in Champions League, Libertadores, an MLS match tonight with Nashville and Dallas, and who knows what other shenanigans we will get into tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out. Mucha plata, y'all.